Hey everyone, I am Aladdin Dandis. I am happy to be joining you in this talk today under the Tech Plus Online Expo for Security 2022 with my paper entitled Security Management, the Untold Tales. Let me share my screen. Okay. So, who am I first? So, for me, I am Aladdin Dandis, my name. Working as security manager with more than 15 years of expertise. I live in Jordan. I like Petra as one of our archaeologists and ancient places here. Um, Across my journey, I have diverse sectors to work on. So I worked in the government, in the government sector. I worked under a non-for-profit organization for e-health and a startup for e-commerce, and finally working with Amazon, the enterprise, multinational and international enterprise. So through this journey, actually, I worked in many specialists, like the cloud and application security, working for PKI and encryption, GRC, architecture, security architecture, privacy, and I waved into the bug bounty programs, working in many speaks and, run multiple trainings and awareness campaigns here and there. So basically, I am a physicist. Then I completed my master's degree in CIS. I hold multiple certificates and belong to multiple international organizations with profession in the for computer science and security. Uh, let's see the agenda today. So I will be talking about the information security, how to move from the strategic level into the operations first. Then I will be talking more about the security management models and how do they apply into the newer, management models and new organizations, regardless if it's a government, public sector, private sector, MPO, whatever. But maybe because my latest expertise was under an international company, so maybe some of the examples I will be mentioning are related mainly for Amazon. One thing to mention here that in time I'm working in Amazon, not necessarily all the learnings I'm sharing with you today are related to Souk or Amazon, but it's a general practices. But I can involve and contribute with my challenges that I faced and the expertise, some learnings that I can share with you to overcome these kinds of challenges as you go through within your way into managing the strategic and the operations levels within your organization. So that's the first actual topic. We need to move on. So regardless of the industry, regardless of the sector you're working on, and regardless of the shape of the enterprise or organization you are working on, usually we start by initiating the security strategy, which is usually inherited from the corp strategy and corp direction. So the business strategy usually it says that I need to do 1 to 3 within 3 or 5 years, or maybe 10 years. And from your side, you need to satisfy these kinds of requirements, high-level strategic requirements, by doing your own strategy. This doesn't mean that you need to skip, let's say, the risks posture and the threat profile and the current trending risks that you are facing, and maybe the incidents that you faced recently, or maybe expected to be coming in the upcoming months and years. So this is actually need to be added to this security strategy, by which we can then converge it into multiple programs, and then each program will be converted into multiple projects. And at the end of these projects, everything goes on daily basis, like day-to-day operations. So this is usually how things are done, regardless if it's security, non-security. So usually this is the waterfall method we are using to make sure that we have strategic alignment with the business strategy and requirements. Actually, I need to mention here that reflecting this kind of security strategy, so usually we have more than, or we have multiple governance bodies for security inside the government, inside the governance itself. And so usually we can talk about the Security Advisory Board, Security Steering Committee. We can say that we have the CISO, the security managers, and actually in the big enterprises, usually these programs are assigned to multiple security managers. So there is no single security manager is taking care of everything. So that's why we need to differentiate between the context. So usually in the small organization, a security manager can be sufficient, but in big enterprises, especially when it's distributed among multiple geolocations, usually you need multiple security managers to work on, as we'll be seeing shortly. Usually when we need to start to initiate and assess the security management profile within an organization, we need to ask some questions that will help us to scope and nominate and create the candidate security model, management model that need to be applied and focused on. So usually first we ask on the who. So is it one or more? And who should be? Is it like a dedicated security officer, like chief security officer, or usually it's assigned to something like the CIO or the CTO that who will be taking care of this. Usually also it could be the chief risk officer. So regardless of the shape of the name of who, it's important here, based on the size and based on the number of industries and the number of maybe subsidiaries and departments related to this organization, in order to decide how many and who should be the owner. This is the first question. After that, we need to know actually what would be the context to do that. So is it like industry-based? Is it like expansion over years by mergers and acquisitions? Is it something related to compliance issue that we need to allocate a dedicated security manager in this sector as per the regulatory requirements? And this happens actually in some countries. So usually in India, for instance, for each payment company, they need to allocate something like a chief security officer. But if this payment country is part of a bigger, payment company is a part of a bigger company, like a holding company, so usually internally, he has like internal reporting structure into higher, let's say, security leaders. But let's say in front of this country, he is the POC and he is the accountable person for security for this organization. We need then to look for the motivation. So usually here we look into, should I secure the entire business or look into a segment of this business. Even I'm talking about the same country. So maybe I'm working in a company that has shipping, working on shipping, e-commerce, payments. So is it okay to put someone for security, like to lead security efforts in the shipping company, another one into the e-commerce company, another one into the payment company? Yes, this is something you need to think of and make sure that you have a decision about that. Next, you need to reflect this into something manageable. So you say, how do they act? How will they do this? So this means that you need some governance documentation, like the processes, standards, policies, procedures, guidelines that need to be set there, roles, responsibilities, in order to shape and clarify how do they react, how do they interact with each other. And also one of the major questions here is about where they are located and what is the scope of their custody and what is the scope of their accountability. Is it a region, a country level, a branch level? So this is another thing to take care about. Next, we need to check if this structure is happening permanently or for a temporary basis. Let me share you like one of the things or the cases. So when we acquire a new subsidiary, usually if it's working under a fully migration strategy, then you need to secure this migration. So you need to initiate this team, like a task force security team, in order to make sure that all security requirements are identified and followed before we can complete the migration, and thus we complete it successfully. After that, this team is no more requested, and all the POCs that are working on this team can get back to their original teams. So this is one kind of the answers on when we need it, and is it a permanent or a temporary structure? Okay, now we need to check another thing regarding security management before we talk about the models is about the security investments, because this is a critical part. Usually security is underestimated everywhere. Why? For different stories or for different reasons, but maybe one of the major reasons is that security usually is treated like working with the minimal effort. So unfortunately, unless we face an incident to realize that how security is important, and we need and wish we were investing more to mitigate and to prevent our infrastructure and operations from these kinds of incidents. However, because of the probability, that low probability is going to realize these kinds of breaches. So like business leaders say, it's a matter of luck. So if we were lucky, we will live without need to invest anything in security, or at least we don't have to invest all the requirements of the security strategy. And we have to pick up certain things that we believe, or the business teams believe, they are sufficient to implement and make sure that the organization is well protected. However, regardless of that, what kind of security investments do we have? We have two types. One related to the core services of the security team. And these are related to let's say, for IAM, for the encryption, related also for the endpoint detection and response, related also for the code scans, the vulnerability scanners, regardless it's web or infrastructure, network, operating systems. So these kinds of investments are treated as security core investments, which means that they are tightly related to the nature and the nature of services that security team is providing to the entire organization. Now, the second part of investments usually is related to the business part. So it's not something we provide all the time, but maybe for a special case, we need some to invest more in security. And this happens usually in the case of, let's say, migration projects or maybe integration with a new partner, like the cloud-based deployment, especially for software as a service, because we need to make sure that all the data and traffic is secure. The integrations through APIs or multiple interfaces are secure enough. And like say for patch management of business systems, because we as a security team, we may do the patches to update the systems and secure it from the discovered vulnerabilities. But usually, if not done appropriately, these systems will be impacted. And these services related to these systems, which is exposed to the customer, may be tightly impacted, hardly impacted. And thus, the business will be facing more harm in its reputation, and maybe some regulatory fines may apply. However, regardless of this, we need to distinguish between these two kinds of investments that are usually outcome of the security strategy. Okay, now let's talk about the security models, management models. So in the management models, we mentioned that usually in the small and medium enterprises, we usually have one team is taking care about everything. Maybe we have two teams, one for under the risk and the other under the IT or under operations. Regardless of that, we need to know that we have something called centralized team and something confederated teams. Let's think about now that a big enterprise or a big company could be e-commerce, could be e-health company, could be financial, like a bank that's going to buy and acquire multiple subsidiaries or multiple companies. So, but originally, each of these companies, whether they fall under the same industry or diverse industries, each of them may have one or more people taking care about security. So it depends now how we are going to manage and treat these kinds of new acquisitions. We really need to make them part of the centralized security team, or we can keep everything under its business unit team so they can better advise and they can better secure their operations and fulfill their security requirements. This is usually happening over the history in many, let's say, cases. One of them is about merging and acquisitions, which we'll be discussing more in the next slides. So in the case of merging and acquisitions, you are taking a new company with all the entire data, people, processes, identities, all the controls, security measures, all the infrastructure, the systems, the applications, the governance, the liabilities, even the functions like incident response and other security services. So you are taking everything. Now, it depends now what you are going to do with this subsidiary. So are you, as an acquirer, are you going to keep this subsidiary running as a standalone company, and the only thing that you communicate or let's say, interact with is about the profits and getting the, financial profits, stocks, working under, maybe even taking some of their liabilities in the face of the government and others. So this is the first option, which is keep separated. So you don't integrate your infrastructure, your applications, you don't consume directly their data or their services, or even back and forth. So even you don't provide any outbound traffic to them or outbound services from your side to their side. Now, this subsidiary then is acting as a single entity and totally separated from you. It's legally only owned by you. Now, there is another kind of maturity where you partially integrate some of their applications and services. Maybe they can consume some of your services and take some of your, let's say, network services or VPN, or be integrated with some payroll applications within your organization. At a higher layer, you may be willing to integrate fully all of their infrastructure and services with you. And here you need to do very in-depth due diligence, because this is a long-term engagement, long-term integration. So let's say even on the identity, on the Active Directory level, on the network level, on the applications level, even in the governance level, they are tightly integrated with you, which means that unless you are taking your own precautions and all the due diligence are done appropriately, you may be breached for a security bar, because maybe the security bar within this subsidiary is lower than yours. It could be higher, but usually they are different. So you can expect some kind of security breaches to come away. The upper layer that you are going to fully integrate, migrate everything from that subsidiary into your side, then you are going to shut down and deprecate the subsidiary. And this is happening actually many times, and happened a lot within the history. So what we are going to do here is that we are taking everything, even the security services, into our side. We control everything. We'll be taking all the data, all the systems, and maybe we will deprecate even the systems and applications and take the data only, so we can proceed with our operations and then deprecate everything related to the subsidiary. Now, depending on these 4 levels, you need then to decide how would be the shape of your security management model. So usually here, you will start like a hybrid model between federated model with the centralized, and then we'll be deprecating these small teams and integrated with the centralized team. But in the keep separated, usually the security teams within these subsidiaries or business units will keep working as is, business as usual, with no changes, no major changes, maybe some of the governance that is enforced from the central security teams into this subsidiary or business unit. Okay. Now, if we are looking to this case from, let's say, from the sky, so we can see how, for example, that we have 3 major business units within this organization. One is the IT, the fintech, and the e-health. So the e-health here is a business unit, which means that this company is natively providing this service. But then they acquired another subsidiary, which is a fintech. And already the IT is part of my native internal procedure that need to be managed and owned by me as an organization. This is like, say, a view from the sky, how they are separated into, or how these organizations belong to me as an acquirer organization, or as a big organization. Now, if you look into each of these business units or subsidiary, you may find many security functions under each of them. You may find some duplicates. So you may find some duplicates in the fintech and e-health, or fintech and IT, that usually need to be at certain point resolved to remove the concurrency or these duplicates, so we can cut the cost and better manage these things. So for instance, under the fintech, you may find a cloud security team, a mobile security team, and a cryptography security team, maybe. Or maybe for crypto under the cryptocurrency, for instance. However, as an IT, usually they may own the SOC for monitoring. They may own the application security as part of the secure pipelines they are securing and offering. And for sure, they should own the IAM as part of the native IT functions. On the e-health part, they may own something related to the compliance and privacy as part of regulatory compliance. Now, if you look at this shape, you will find that maybe some of these are duplicated and can be better moved into another team, or aggregated to another team, or maybe at certain stages, you can say, okay, because the fintech company is running, let's say, in my European operations region, and they should follow the GDPR and other regulation. Let's keep their security functions there, so they can better respond to the requirements and the threats that may happen into their region. On the other hand, for the IT, they may still own the same thing. By the way, I'm not talking here the IT as native IT, but let's say more precisely, you are talking about the IT security teams. So in order to better manage these things, if you are aware of the concept of object orientation, so usually we are defining some class that have shared, let's say, features or shared pieces of information or definitions into the top, and then keep the customization happening in the lower levels. So if we refer back here, maybe we have a specific security policy that governs everything related to the health business unit. Another policy is that governs the IT. Another security policy that governs the fintech subsidiary. But we can find some shared requirements and shared direction that can be abstracted and pushed to the upper level here. And we put it under something called the corporate security policy. And then we keep all the differences into each segment underlying the corporate or the upper level of the core security policy. So this is one way. Same thing goes if we are talking about other things like the incident response. So we may have like a centralized incident response team that is taking care of the major operations, communications platform, managing the tickets, managing the responses, all the hacks and breaches that happening. But we may have another offices that may handle lower level and lower severity of responses that may happen in another time zones or may happen in other geolocations. Maybe it has some restrictions from their original company, their original countries. So we need to keep it there under their own, let's say, business units. Now, let me talk here more precisely about the major challenges that we may face within the security model, the management models. So if we are looking about an example for subsidiaries like keep, partial integration, full integration, and or deprecate, let's say, direction, the governance model is different from each of them. So in the keep, we said that all the governance is still managed by this subsidiary, like all their policies and proceed, but they may be influenced by the core security governance. This is actually the must. And even the audit and oversight may goes from this subsidiary into the centralized team that is usually taking care of everything related to the organization. In the partial integration, they may need to enforce some certain security requirements, especially on the services. So some processes and policies should be now adhered as is before you are able to integrate. That goes from the partial into the full integration. Now, regarding the deprecation, so usually this is a very gray and tricky part. And we will see later from the investments that it's really crazy area. Now, for the deprecate, you start first to rely on their own governance, but you may ask them to change their own policies, not change them all, but at least to make some changes to their policies to meet your security bar. Because if they are not deploying the required controls that is nominated by my policy, how can I make sure that we have a smooth migration and secure migration from their end to my end as an acquirer organization? So this is actually a very tricky part. Same goes for compliance. So usually when you acquire something, usually they have their own compliance ecosystem that they need to follow and comply to. So it's better for them not to keep it as is, unless you have something related like the SOX, Oxley, Sarbanes-Oxley, what's called SOX, compliance, by which even this subsidiary is under your umbrella as a bigger organization. So you need to make sure that all required set of controls are adhered to. Now, another tricky part when we talk about budgeting and investments. So I will take here about the deprecate part, because this is actually the very crazy area. Now, think about it. You acquire the subsidiary and you need to move it under your umbrella, means that everything related to their processes, data, will be now migrated into your side. Now, through the migration, it may take years. It may take months, depending on the number of applications and any kind of contractual liabilities that need to complement before you can complete the migration. Now, through this, it may take years. So everything, or usually it comes to the mind, why do we need to invest in something we need to deprecate? Why do we need to secure an application that will be deprecated next month? Why should we apply encryption on data that will be migrated in 6 months from now? So these kinds of questions will provide some debates and need to be running under some trade-off methodology. What is the risk? So if we have really a big risk, regardless if it's a business risk, if it's the security risk coming from non-compliance or whatever, this is actually need to be taken care about before we can decide whether what level of investment we can go on and what kind of risk acceptance we can take before we can do this migration without applying certain set of controls. Duplicates and conflict of interest happens all the time, especially when you acquire something new. So who owns this? Who owns this? Should it be like our team or your team? At what point now of the migration or the integration we can take the ownership or release the ownership from my side to your side? And especially when we have some incidents that happen, who should be blamed and who should take action to resolve this incident and close this vulnerability or remove this ransom that happened to my system. Also the sourcing. So sourcing here means multiple things. First, should I do in-source or outsource to complete these projects? The second thing, can I accept sourcing from remote countries, remote places, or they should come on site? Also, who will be paying for these kinds of sourcing? Who will be taking care about the budget for sourcing? So this is usually depends on the type of this business unit, if we are going to keep it or release it. The change management, the metrics for performance, should they rely on their processes for performance and performance measurement and metrics, or should they follow ours? Also, for change management, should they use our change management process, our systems? What kind of chain of approval is required in order to fulfill this change? Another thing happening here related to sanctions and communications. So especially when it comes to multiple countries and multiple time zones. So how teams are gonna be communicated, especially when we have different weekends. So let's say in the Middle East, the weekends at some countries is Fridays and Saturdays. Others are Saturdays and Sundays. So this provides another challenge, because you will find some 3 days that all of your teams cannot get engaged into the same table when you have some requirement on me. So practically you will find only 4 days that all the teams can communicate with each other. And this also has some implications on the on-call strategy and who will be, let's say, working through the nights and weekends, and how the teams on the East can talk to the teams on the West. Also, that happens, have the same challenges with the, if you have some business units or business units or companies under countries that are put under some sanctions or have some political issues. So let's take this for instance. So if you have multiple branches and multiple companies, let's think about that we have some sanction happen to one of these branches under this country. How can I be communicating with them? What will happen to the data that I'm working on? And so usually you have to put some DR and business continuity strategy to make sure that data is replicated, and you have other people on the other side of the world or other regions can access this data and proceed with these operations. So this is usually happening and will impact also the integrity of the team because usually, you know, if most of the teams are based, let's say, in the States and let's say, for instance, in Ireland or London, and you have some security engineers, for instance, on the eastern side of the world, should they be working remotely, or it's better for them to relocate and work with the team? So these are questions that you need to understand and agree upon before you decide on the security model. So just to give you some summary of this talk, first of all, you need to follow and understand the corporate direction. And will it be expanding into other different industries, other countries, other regions? Should I follow certain regulatory or legal frameworks? So this is something you need to check. Also, you need to better decide which is better to work on, like federated model, which is more practical, or make it centralized team that is supervising different federated security teams, or maybe just to put everything under your umbrella so you are taking care about everything. The third thing you need to follow is to check and assess the risks versus the benefits from each of these models, and to decide for the challenges that you need to face, which is better to do, which with each of this challenge. Is it better to keep things like keep business units as is, or to shut down even the business into some countries and areas so you can protect your company and make it more integral? So also, you need to justify your security investments, regardless they are security or security-enabled investments, and make it one of your core language with your business leaders that make use of numbers and justified numbers, why you need these investments to happen, and why it is a priority that you shouldn't sacrifice in the upcoming months and years. So this is in summary what I wanted to share with you, and hopefully it's good. Thank you for watching. See you in the next event. Thank you. Bye-bye.